Welcome back, everyone. Michael here with Offshore Citizen. Today we're going to be kind of responding to, again, a comment from one of our viewers who was asking a little bit about some context around what it takes to get set up in a foreign country, to set up a foreign structure, etc., and that would kind of provide some context of, does it make sense for you? Are you ready, etc. So we're going to talk about, what does it cost to set up an offshore structure, to potentially move abroad, and to be in a situation where you can pay lower tax. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover kind of some general numbers here, because the reality is that there's no one size fits all. So anytime somebody is telling you, hey, here's the one size fits all solution that they're pointing to, that person doesn't know what they're talking about, you should run away, right? Every country has different rules. It's one of the things I have to spend a lot of time educating clients on, is somebody will come to me and they'll say, hey, so I think I need a Hong Kong company. And I'm like, okay, well, why is that? It's like, well, my friend has a Hong Kong company. It's like, great. Is that friend in the same circumstances as you? Are they from the same country? Do they have the same operations? Do they have the same business, etc.? No? Okay, well then maybe it is for you. We don't know. But certainly don't take it as that, because it is for somebody else. So anyway, all of these are case by case. I'm giving you some general guidelines. And so that brings me to the next thing, which is, first of all, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, make sure you don't miss out on any of our videos. We try to produce great content for you every day. And if you have questions about this subject, you would like some personalized advice, you would like help with getting residency permits, second passports, including unofficial citizenships, if you're interested at all in international tax planning, how to pay the lowest legal amount of tax possible, whether you stay in your home country or you go abroad, how to structure your businesses, setting up offshore companies, opening bank accounts, asset protection, please reach out to me. You can book a call, clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer. There's a link below. Or you can check out our websites, offshorecitizen.net and offshorecapitalist.com. All right, so I'm going to try and break this down into pieces, okay? So let's assume, first of all, a scenario where you're actually going to go and live somewhere else, okay? This is by far the easiest in terms of your tax planning if you're willing to go somewhere optimized, but could be difficult if you go the other way, okay? So I'm going to tell you, hey, here's what you can expect in terms of building corporate structures. Here's what you can expect in terms of just moving abroad, and sometimes you're going to combine those two, all right? So if I was in a situation where I was going to go and move abroad, to get some sort of a residency permit, I would say by the time you pay the legal fees, by the time you go through all this stuff, not counting travel costs, okay, because you obviously have to go there in most cases, usually you're talking somewhere between like $3,000 and $10,000, okay? Sometimes you can do it a little cheaper, right? Sometimes it's going to cost a little bit more. Maybe you're going to get a Thai elite visa for 20 years or something, and it's going to cost a bunch more. Or even for 5 years, it's going to cost a bunch more. But usually that range, okay? That's to kind of get a residency permit in some other place, okay? $3,000 to $10,000, okay? That's point number one. What's next? Now, obviously, when you go there, you're going to have some cost associated with actually, moving your life, right? If you're going to go and move. Now, this could be a positive thing, because it could end up saving you a lot of money, right? Maybe you're moving from, I don't know, Oslo in Norway to, Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and your cost of living is going to go down a lot. So in that particular case, you're like, hey, well, I just won, because maybe it cost me a little bit to move, but my cost savings over time are dramatic. And certainly, that's great, right? Eastern Europe has some great cost options. Southeast Asia has some great cost options. There's some in Latin America. Some places in Latin America are a little more expensive, like Costa Rica and Panama, but there's certainly some cheaper options there as well. So depending on where you go, that may be the case. It may also be the opposite, right? Maybe you're coming from a place like, I don't know, let's say you were moving from India to UAE. Well, India is going to be a lot cheaper than UAE in terms of cost of living. So be aware of that. Also, if you move to somewhere like UAE, typically they want a year of rent in advance. You can get month by month and quarter by quarter, but you usually pay a premium for it, and there's usually less selection. So a year of rent in advance, that's a lot of capital you're putting out there, right? If it's costing you, I don't know, let's say it was $3,000 a month, which would be pretty cheap for a lot of places in Dubai. It's $36,000 upfront that you're paying. So, not necessarily what everybody is looking for, but so be aware of that. Now, if that takes you to some place where you have an optimized tax situation, great. Now, maybe you can just operate directly personally, but usually you're in a situation where that's not going to be the best way to go. And the reason for that often is socials, right? Even if you're earning income as a resident, you may have to pay Social Security contributions, and you want to get around that. Usually the easiest way to get around that is to have a company and pay yourself dividends, okay? So you can ask, all right, well, what about setting up a company? Now, here we start to get into a very case by case. I would say that setting up corporate structures, and by the way, sometimes that corporate structure is included as part of the process of getting you resident, right? So for instance, the easiest way typically to get a residency permit in UAE is to set up a company, okay? So great, you're already there. It's included in your, 10 grand or whatever it is, the price that you ultimately end up paying. But if not, right, then you may have to set something up. And sometimes you may have to set something up outside of that country because it doesn't make sense to have something in the local country. I would say on the low end, what you should expect is probably around 2 grand for this, $2,000, euros, pounds, whatever, something like that. Somewhere in that range, okay? That's the low end. It could be, 2,500 on the low end, but it's somewhere in that range, okay? And what is this going to get you? This is going to get you a company. This is going to get you a bank account. This is going to get you your registered office, or your registered address, your registered agent, maybe the corporate documents that may be necessary. Sometimes they have to be apostilled and things like this, and maybe your registration with for the tax filings. Okay, that's kind of like what you're looking at. Again, varies country to country. Could be much more, could be slightly less. Not often slightly less. Okay. Then you can say, all right, well, what about on the higher end? On the higher end, I would say that you're talking about around. So let's say you have only one company. You're talking about maybe like 15 grand, somewhere in that range, okay? Now, sometimes you're gonna want a much more complex structure, right? You're somebody who, hey, listen, it's not so easy for what you're doing because you need to have a multi-layered structure, maybe you need trusts involved, maybe you need whatever else, right? In that situation, the kind of ballpark figure, what I usually tell people is like, look, the price can be $20,000 to $120,000. Realistically, the figure that I tell people if you have a complex structure like that is somewhere between $35,000 and $65,000. Okay, that's kind of like what you can expect. If you're like, okay, I need to set up trusts, I need to get trustees, I need to have probably multiple companies, I need multiple bank accounts, I may need fiduciaries to be involved in this process, etc. There's probably some travel for some people involved in order to go through this, etc. Then there's probably some tax planning involved, right? Maybe I have to do a transfer pricing study, etc., etc. You're probably, again, it could be 20 to 120, but usually it's in the 30 to 65 range, okay? It's rarely outside of that. So yeah, that kind of gives you some idea. So what's the relevance of this? The relevance of this is, well, depending on how much you're making is going to tell you what your tax bill is. And based on your tax bill, that's going to inform, is there an ROI? What I always tell people is it doesn't make any sense to set up an international structure if you're not getting at least 100% ROI out of it. So if it cost you 20 grand to say set it up, you better save at least 40, right? It's just like, because there's going to be some added hassles associated with it. If you're at break even, just stick with a domestic company and don't worry about it, right? If on the other hand, you're in a situation where you're saying, hey, listen, I'm paying a few $100 grand a year in tax, right? Which is quite common. Well, then in that situation, it probably makes a ton of sense to invest yourself into first of all, you have to do proper planning, figure out what's the best structure, then B, building the structure, and C, maintaining the structure accurately. So anyway, I hope that helps. I hope it gives some context around, are you ready to go offshore? Are you ready to set something up? What are your savings going to be? What are your costs going to be? Does it make sense for you? So I hope that helps. If you are interested at all in this, if you'd like some help, some personalized advice, etc., please reach out to me again, clarity.fm/Michael Rosmer. There's a link below. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you don't like the video, please would love some feedback. Give us to us in the comments. And yeah, please share the video with your friends. Click the subscribe button, click the notification bell, and I'm going to see you guys on the next video.